he needed a prom date. I wasn't even supposed to know that. I found out because of Sarah, my best friend since forever, who burst into the cafeteria that day with her usual loud voice and dramatic flair. I was in the middle of peeling an orange when she slammed her tray down beside me and dropped the news like it was just another piece of gossip. "Ryan doesn't have a date to prom." I blinked at her, caught off guard, juice from the orange dripping between my fingers. "So?" I asked, trying to sound disinterested. But inside, something tightened in my chest. Ryan, her older brother. The guy who barely said 2 words to me unless he was being polite. The guy who always seemed to glide through high school with this smooth confidence that made people either admire him or hate him. Or both. I'd seen him around, of course. At their house. At school. At the gym sometimes when Sarah dragged me to basketball games. He wasn't like the other guys. He wasn't all loud and obnoxious. He was quieter, sharper. The kind of guy who could kill you with a glance, but also say, "Thank you," when you passed him the ketchup. And now he needed a date. Somehow, that detail stuck with me the rest of the day. Like a pebble in my shoe I couldn't shake out. I didn't ask any more questions, but I was curious. I shouldn't have been. That night I got a text. Unknown number. Just 5 words. "Hey. It's Ryan. Can we talk?" My heart kicked in my chest so hard I actually dropped my phone onto my bed. I stared at the screen. Was it a prank? Did Sarah give him my number? I waited a few minutes before answering, just in case it was some mistake. Then I typed back. "Sure." "About what?" And hit send with a kind of nervous energy buzzing through my veins. My palms were sweating. He didn't take long to reply. "Prom. I was wondering if you'd go with me." I stared at those words. Just stared. My stomach flipped. I had to read it 3 times before I could even breathe. This had to be a joke. There was no way. I wasn't the kind of person people picked for something like that. I was quiet, stayed in my lane, kept my head down. I wasn't flashy or popular. I wasn't anyone's first choice. I was the invisible guy in the background of other people's stories. So why would Ryan, my best friend's older brother, ask me to prom? I didn't answer right away. I couldn't. A million thoughts ran through my head. What if Sarah found out? Would she be mad? Would she feel weird? What if this ruined everything? But also, what if this was something real? What if he meant it? What if he actually saw me? I stared at the screen until my eyes started to burn. Finally I typed, "Are you serious?" and hit send before I could change my mind. His reply came fast. "Yeah. I mean it. Just think about it. No pressure. No pressure." As if he had any idea what kind of pressure this actually was. I couldn't sleep that night. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, running over every memory I had of him. Every time he'd smiled at me from the kitchen counter while pouring cereal. Every time he passed me in the hallway at school and gave a half nod. Every single little moment that didn't feel like anything before but suddenly meant everything. And now, here he was, asking me to prom like it was normal. The next morning, I saw Sarah by her locker. I wanted to ask her if she knew, if she had any clue. But I didn't. I couldn't. I smiled, said hi, and tried not to act different. Inside, I was spinning. Then, during math class, I texted Ryan back. "Okay. I'll go." Just that. Simple. No emojis. No heart. No nerves, at least not on the surface. But the second I hit send, my heart was pounding so loud I could barely hear the teacher. He replied instantly. "Cool. Thank you." Just like that. like we were planning a ride to school and not completely rearranging the fabric of my world. Over the next few days, things started to shift. We didn't talk all the time, not yet. But he'd send me little messages, jokes, random questions. "What color are you wearing?" Or, "Do you like slow dances or fast songs?" I answered awkwardly at first, but slowly I loosened up. He made it easy. He never teased, never pushed. He just talked. Like I mattered. Like I was someone worth talking to. And then came the moment that really made my hands shake. One night, around 10 p.m., I got a text. "You're easy to talk to." Just that. Nothing else. No context. I stared at the screen, my chest warm and tight. I wanted to say something smooth back, something confident. But I wasn't that guy. So I just replied, "You too." But I meant it. More than I could say. More than I even knew how to explain. Every day after that felt different. Like the air around me had shifted. I started to notice things I hadn't before. How my heart sped up when I saw his name pop up on my phone. How I smiled when I read his messages. And how I caught myself looking for him in the halls, even though I told myself I wasn't. I couldn't stop it. Something was happening. Something I didn't have a name for. But it was real. It was there. And it scared me. Not because it felt wrong, but because it felt right. Too right. The Friday before prom, I stayed late in the library, pretending to work on a paper. My phone buzzed, and it was him again. "What's your favorite song?" "Just wondering." I replied without thinking. "Yellow Lights." He replied with a single line that made me forget how to breathe. "I want our first dance to be under those lights." I didn't answer right away. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. I read it again and again. I wanted to scream, or laugh, or cry, or all three. I couldn't tell if he was just being sweet or if he meant more. But my heart decided for me. I typed, "Me too." Then I locked my phone, leaned back in the chair, and covered my face with my hands. I never expected to feel this. Not with him. Not like this. But the thing about emotions is, they don't wait for permission. They don't ask if it's safe. They just happen. And when they do, they change everything. I didn't know what would come next. I didn't know if it would last. But I knew this. I was going to prom. With him. Ryan. My best friend's brother. And whether it was a mistake or something bigger, I was already falling. Slowly. Quietly. Helplessly. The days leading up to prom passed slowly, but somehow also in a blur. Each morning I woke up with my stomach twisting in knots, and every night I fell asleep replaying our text in my head, wondering what each word might mean. It wasn't just about going to prom anymore. It was something else. Something quietly blooming beneath the surface, creeping into everything I did. I found myself reaching for my phone the moment I opened my eyes, hoping for a message from him. I found myself staring at the screen far too long, overthinking what to say, wondering if he'd read too much or too little into my words. And even when there was silence, it wasn't empty. It was heavy, loaded with everything unspoken between us. That silence meant more than the loudest screams. Ryan wasn't like other guys. There was no arrogance in him. No overconfidence. He never acted like he was doing me a favor by talking to me. In fact, sometimes I felt like he was just as unsure as I was. There was a softness to him, something in the way he replied to my messages that made me feel seen. Like he wasn't just talking out of kindness, but out of choice. And for someone like me, someone who often felt invisible, that mattered more than I could explain. One afternoon, after school, he texted me, What color's your outfit? Just so I don't clash. I smiled at my screen, then paused, unsure. I hadn't even thought about that part. I was still stuck on the idea that I was actually going. That I was going with him. I hadn't even picked a suit yet. Everything felt so unreal that it was hard to focus on the details. But I didn't want him to know that. I didn't want to seem unprepared. So I answered with a shrug of confidence I didn't feel. Black. With silver accents, maybe, he replied. Nice. I'll match you. Just like that. As if it were the most natural thing in the world. As if the world would allow two boys to stand side by side in matching colors under fairy lights, without stares or whispers. That evening, I went shopping with my mom. She didn't know who I was going with. I hadn't told her. I didn't know how. I told her it was a friend. I think she believed me, or maybe she didn't, but she didn't press. She helped me pick out a suit, helped me try on shoes, even gave me a small nod when I asked for the silver tie. You look good, she said. Really good. I smiled, but it didn't reach my eyes. My mind was elsewhere. With him. With how he'd look when he saw me in it. With what his eyes might say. With how close we'd stand. I imagined his hand on my back, guiding me through the crowd. I imagined his voice in my ear. And I knew I was too far gone. Our texts kept coming every day. Some were short. Some were long. Sometimes we just sent each other stupid memes. Sometimes he asked about music, or movies, or favorite snacks. Sometimes it was deeper. One night, just before midnight, he asked, Do you ever feel like you're not supposed to want what you want? The question made my chest tighten. My thumb hovered over the keyboard. I didn't want to assume. I didn't want to ruin anything by reading too much into it. But how could I not? I thought for a moment, then wrote, Every day. He didn't respond right away. 10 minutes passed. Then 20. I put my phone down, heart racing. Then it buzzed. Same. Just one word. But it carried so much. It told me I wasn't alone. It told me he understood. And that scared me more than anything else. The next day at school, everything felt different. I saw him walking down the hallway, laughing with his friends. But then he caught my eye and gave me the smallest nod. Barely a movement. But I felt it. It was for me. It was real. I walked past Sarah later that afternoon, and she said, Ryan seems weirdly happy lately. Wonder what's up with him. I forced a smile, shrugged. Maybe he's excited for prom. She grinned. You're lucky to be going with him. I mean, don't let it go to your head or anything, but he's kind of a big deal. My throat tightened. I didn't answer. I just walked with her toward the parking lot, my heart heavy with the weight of secrets I wasn't ready to share. That night, Ryan texted me again. Can I ask you something? I stared at the message. I typed, sure, and hit send. His reply came a minute later. What would you do if someone close to you didn't approve? I knew exactly what he meant. I didn't need details. I knew that fear. I'd lived with it. I typed slowly, careful with each word. I tried to understand them. But I'd still choose what makes me feel like myself. He replied with 3 words. You're really brave. I didn't feel brave. I felt terrified. But hearing that from him, reading it, knowing he saw me that way, it gave me something I didn't know I needed. Each message became a thread, weaving us together in a web of gentle understanding and quiet longing. We never said the words out loud. We didn't talk about labels. We didn't talk about who we were, or what we were to each other. But it was there. In the space between messages. In the late night silences. in the pauses after certain sentences. It was all unspoken, but it was real. And it was growing stronger. The night before prom, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, my thoughts spiraling. I wondered what tomorrow would look like. I wondered how it would feel to stand next to him. I wondered if we'd dance. If he'd touch my hand. If he'd look at me like he meant it. I wondered if Sarah would notice. If anyone would. And I wondered, most of all, if this was just a moment, or the beginning of something I wasn't ready to name. At 1:03 a.m., my phone buzzed. Ryan. Nervous? I smiled in the dark. Very. A moment passed. Then he wrote, "Don't be. Tomorrow. I've got you." My breath caught. I read those words again and again, memorizing them, holding on to them like they were a promise. And maybe in a way they were. Maybe that was his way of telling me I wasn't alone. That he'd stand by me. That whatever came next, we'd face it together. I put my phone down, turned onto my side, and closed my eyes. My heart was still racing, but I felt a little lighter. A little warmer. I didn't know what would happen tomorrow. I didn't know if we'd be found out, or if things would fall apart. But for the first time in a long time, I wasn't afraid of wanting something. I wasn't ashamed of the way my heart beat faster when I thought of him. Because he wanted this too. He wanted me. And that, no matter how quiet, no matter how hidden, was enough to get me through the night. Prom night arrived under a sky washed in soft golds and deep violets. The sun had just dipped below the trees, and everything outside my bedroom window shimmered with that quiet magic that only happens right before the world changes. I stood in front of the mirror, tying and readying my silver tie for the third time, my fingers fumbling even though I'd practiced. My heart was pounding so loudly it drowned out the soft music playing from my speaker. I could feel the weight of the night pressing down on my shoulders, beautiful, terrifying, and heavier than anything I'd ever worn. The suit fit perfectly. Sleek black, with a soft silver trim that caught the light just enough. I looked at myself and almost didn't recognize the person staring back. I looked calm, polished, like someone who belonged. But inside, I was anything but. My phone buzzed. One word. Outside. I didn't breathe. For a full 5 seconds, I just stood there, frozen, staring at the screen. Then I grabbed my jacket, ran a hand through my hair one last time, and stepped out the door. My mom called from the kitchen. "Have fun, sweetheart!" But I barely heard her. My legs moved on their own as I walked down the steps, every nerve in my body humming. And then I saw him. Ryan stood by his car, leaning casually against the passenger door. He wore a suit that matched mine exactly, black with a silver trim, but on him, it looked effortless. His hair was styled, but not too much, like he just rolled out of bed looking perfect. He looked up and smiled, and for a moment, I forgot how to speak. I forgot how to move. I just stood there, staring, my mouth slightly open, heart racing like I'd just sprinted a mile. He opened the car door for me without saying a word. I slid inside, the leather seats cool beneath me, the air thick with something unspoken. The drive was quiet at first. Music played softly from the radio, something mellow and forgettable, but my head was too loud to hear any of it. Ryan glanced over at me a few times, his lips twitching like he wanted to say something but wasn't sure how. Finally, he spoke. "You look really good," he said, his voice low, almost shy. I turned to him, surprised. "Thanks," I replied, my voice too small, too tight. "You too." He smiled at the road. "I was nervous you'd change your mind." That made me laugh, quietly. "I almost did," I admitted. "Why didn't you?" he asked. I looked out the window. The sky was darkening now, the stars just beginning to peek out. Because I didn't want to regret it, I said. And that was the truth. When we pulled into the school parking lot, the gym was already lit up, strings of lights draped across the building like something out of a movie. I could hear music thumping through the walls, the bass vibrating the car. Students were everywhere, laughing, taking pictures, fixing their outfits. Ryan turned off the engine, but neither of us moved. The air between us felt charged, like lightning was about to strike. Ready? He asked. I shook my head. Not even a little. He grinned, and for the first time all night, I saw that familiar, playful light in his eyes. Too bad, he said, and opened his door. When we stepped out of the car together, I felt the world shift. Not visibly. No one stopped and stared. No one whispered. But for me, everything tilted. His hand brushed mine as we walked side by side toward the doors. Not a full touch. Just a ghost of one. And that ghost was enough to make my skin tingle. We stepped into the gym, and I was hit by a wave of light, sound, and color. Everything sparkled, silver streamers, glittering chandeliers, tables lined with glowing centerpieces. Students danced in the middle of the floor, surrounded by clouds of laughter and music. I'd never been to anything like this. It felt surreal. Like stepping into someone else's life. Ryan leaned toward me. Let's get a drink first, he said, leading me toward the refreshment table. His hand rested lightly on my lower back for a brief second, and I swear my knees almost gave out. We stood side by side, sipping punch, trying not to look too awkward. A few people waved at him. He waved back. No one questioned why we were together. At least not yet. But I could feel their eyes. Or maybe it was just my fear imagining it. After a few minutes, the DJ announced the first slow dance. The lights dimmed. The music changed. Something soft and slow started playing. I knew the song immediately. Yellow Lights. My heart stopped. I turned to look at Ryan. He was already looking at me. I asked for it, he said. His voice barely above a whisper. You said it was your favorite. I couldn't speak. My throat closed up. I just stared at him, blinking fast, trying not to cry. He held out his hand. I looked at it. Then at him. And slowly, so slowly, I placed my hand in his. We walked to the dance floor together, the crowd parting slightly, the lights above casting a soft, golden glow across his face. He placed one hand gently on my waist, and I rested mine on his shoulder. Our other hands clasped together, shaky but certain. And we started to move. Slowly. Carefully. Like we were learning how to exist in this moment without falling apart. It was the most terrifying thing I'd ever done. And also the most beautiful. He looked at me, really looked at me, and whispered, "This okay?" I nodded, unable to speak. Everything around us blurred. The music. The lights. The people. It all faded into background noise. All I could see was him. All I could feel was the way his thumb gently traced the back of my hand. The way his eyes held mine like they were the only truth left in the room. But the moment was fragile. So fragile. I saw Sarah out of the corner of my eye. She was standing near the tables, laughing with a group of friends. She hadn't seen us yet. My heart jumped to my throat. I looked away quickly. Panic rose in my chest. Ryan noticed. "We can stop," he whispered. "If you're not ready." I shook my head. "I don't want to stop. I just don't know if I can keep going." He pulled me closer. His voice was steady. "You don't have to do this alone. I'm here. With you." And just like that, The fear didn't go away, but it softened. I rested my head against his chest. He smelled like cedarwood and something warm. He felt safe. We danced like that until the song ended. The lights brightened. The world came back. We stepped off the floor, breathless and quiet. Neither of us said anything, but everything had changed. Something had been said without words. Something neither of us could take back. I knew then that this wasn't just a favor anymore. This was real, and I was in deep. The Monday after prom felt like waking up from a dream that had somehow snuck into reality. The morning light spilling into my room looked the same as it always did. My alarm sounded the same shrill note, and my feet touched the floor in the same sleepy pattern. But nothing was the same. My body moved like it always did, but my heart carried something new, something heavy and soft at the same time, something that felt like it was made of light and fear all at once. I kept replaying prom in my head, every single detail, like I was terrified the memory might fade or change or slip away. I remembered the feel of Ryan's hand in mine, the way his thumb traced soft circles into my skin while we danced, the way his voice trembled slightly when he asked if I was okay, and how his chest rose and fell as I leaned into it. I remembered the lights, the song, the way time slowed when he looked at me, and the strange, scary comfort I felt in his arms. But most of all, I remembered the silence that followed. That quiet, breathless space after the music faded, when we stepped away from the dance floor and stood in the shadows, saying everything with our eyes and nothing with our mouths. That night, after he dropped me off, we didn't say much. He parked in front of my house, let the engine idle, and turned to me with a look I couldn't quite understand. His hand was still on the gearshift, but he wasn't in a hurry to leave. I sat there, unsure of what to do, my hands folded in my lap. We just sat in silence for a while, the soft hum of the car filling the space between us. Then he said, "Thank you for tonight," in a voice so gentle it made my chest ache. I nodded, wanting to say more, needing to say more, but the words tangled in my throat. I opened the door, paused, turned back to him, and whispered, "I'm glad it was you." His eyes softened, and for a moment I thought he might say something big, something that would turn the night into a fairy tale ending, but instead, he just smiled and said, "Good night." And that was it. No kiss. No promises. Just the quiet thud of my door closing behind me and the soft glow of his taillights disappearing down the road. Now, sitting in my usual spot at the lunch table, the weight of that night clung to me like a second skin. Sarah sat across from me, talking about something, homework, probably, or how her date ended up ditching her halfway through the night, but I could barely focus. My mind was still tangled in silver lights and whispered words. I looked up once, just to glance across the cafeteria, and there he was. Ryan. Sitting with his usual group, laughing at something one of his friends said, his head tilted back, mouth wide in a way I'd never seen. He looked normal. Like nothing had changed. Like prom had just been a fun night, and now it was over. I tried not to feel the sting of that. I tried not to let it creep into my chest and settle there like disappointment always does. But it did. I looked back at Sarah. She was still talking, her hands moving animatedly, her voice rising and falling with that energy only she had. I nodded when she paused, gave her a small smile, but inside, I was spinning. I didn't hear from him that whole day. Not a text. Not even a glance in the hallway. And with every hour that passed, the knot in my stomach grew tighter. I kept telling myself not to read into it. Maybe he was busy. Maybe he didn't want to text while he was at school. Maybe he just didn't know what to say. But deep down, in the part of me I tried to ignore, I knew the truth. Something had shifted. And I didn't know if it was in him, or in me. By the time I got home, I was a mess of emotions I didn't have names for. I threw my backpack on the floor and lay on my bed, staring at the ceiling, trying to breathe through the ache. I felt like I was waiting for something to drop, a message, a sign, anything. Minutes passed. Then hours. My phone remained silent. I scrolled through our old texts, rereading them like they were some kind of proof that I hadn't imagined it all. That what we had wasn't just a one-time thing, a moment that only mattered to me. I wanted to believe that he was just scared. That maybe he was figuring things out. That maybe he didn't know how to talk about it. But belief wasn't enough to fill the silence. Finally, sometime around 8, my phone buzzed. My heart leapt, hope rushing through me like a wave. I grabbed it, flipped it over. It was him. 2 words. "Can we talk?" I didn't hesitate. "Yes," I typed, my fingers shaking. He replied, "I'll be there in 10. 10 minutes later, I was sitting on the front steps of my house, my jacket zipped up against the night air, watching his headlights approach. He pulled up slowly, parked, and stayed in the car for a few seconds before getting out. When he finally stood in front of me, his hands shoved deep into his pockets, his eyes didn't meet mine right away. "Hey," he said softly. I nodded. "Hey." There was a long pause, the kind that stretches forever. Then he sat down beside me. "I didn't mean to ignore you," he said. His voice was tired. I could hear the weight in it. I didn't know what to say." I looked down at my hands, fingers curled into my sleeves. "You don't have to say anything," I whispered. "I just needed to know it wasn't just me." "It wasn't," he said quickly. "It's not." He finally looked at me then, and there was something raw in his eyes. "That night, it was real. You know that, right?" I nodded. "Yeah. I do." He let out a breath, like he'd been holding it all day. "It scared me," he said. "I didn't expect it to feel like that. I didn't expect you to matter this much." The words hit me like a punch and a hug all at once. I didn't know what to say, so I just leaned into him, let our shoulders touch. It was small, but it was enough. Enough to let him know I was still here. That I still wanted this. Even if we didn't have a name for it yet. We sat there for a long time, saying nothing, letting the silence speak for us. When he finally stood up to leave, he looked at me and said, "I want to figure this out. With you. Just give me time, okay?" I nodded. "I'm not going anywhere." And I meant it. Even if everything else fell apart, I wasn't going to run. Not from him. Not from this. Because whatever this was, it mattered. It mattered enough to stay. It mattered enough to fight for. Even if it hurt. Even if it was complicated. Even if the world wasn't ready. We were. Or at least, we were trying to be. And maybe that was enough for now. The park bench was cold beneath me, the wood rough and chipped in places, like it had weathered 1,000 forgotten conversations. I sat hunched forward, elbows on my knees, staring at the gravel path as my heart beat steadily against my ribs. It was early evening, that golden hour when everything looked softer than it really was. The air smelled like cut grass and the faint sweetness of spring flowers, but none of it reached me properly. I was too lost in thought, caught somewhere between anticipation and dread. Ryan had asked me to meet him here, and every minute that passed twisted the knot in my stomach a little tighter. It had been a few days since we last spoke face to face, since prom night, and that aching silence afterward, broken only by his promise that we'd figure this out together. But those words had faded a little with time, dulled by distance, and the cruel weight of the real world pressing in around us. Still I came. Because I had to. because I needed to know if those words still meant something to him, or if they dissolved the way good intentions so often do. I heard footsteps before I saw him, the slow crunch of shoes on gravel pulling me out of my thoughts. I looked up just as Ryan rounded the corner, hands in his hoodie pockets, eyes scanning the path until they landed on me. His expression was unreadable, something between nervous and determined. When he reached me, he didn't sit down right away. He stood there, looking at me like he was waiting for permission. I scooted over, patting the empty spot beside me, and he took it silently. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. We just sat there, the quiet stretching out between us like a tightrope we weren't sure how to walk. Finally, he exhaled, long and slow. "I've been thinking," he said, voice low. I didn't respond. I just waited. About everything. About you. About what prom meant. About how I've been acting since then. He paused, and I could see the tension in his jaw. "I know I haven't been consistent. One minute I'm telling you I want this, and the next I disappear. That's not fair to you." I turned to look at him, the way his shoulders curled slightly inward, the way his eyes stayed fixed on the horizon like he couldn't bear to meet mine. "You're scared," I said quietly. "It's okay to be scared." He finally turned to me, his eyes raw. "It's not just that I'm scared. It's that I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to explain this to other people. To Sarah. To my parents. To myself, even. I've always had this image in my head of who I'm supposed to be. What I'm supposed to want. And now that image feels like a lie." His voice cracked on the last word, and I could feel the ache in it. I reached for his hand, not thinking, just reacting. He didn't pull away. His fingers curled around mine slowly, like he needed time just to allow himself that touch. "I get it," I said. "I do. I've had those same thoughts. That same fear. But I can't do this if I'm the only one willing to hold on. I can't be a secret forever. I'm not saying we need to announce it to the world or throw it in anyone's face, but I need to know that you're not ashamed of what this is." I hesitated. "Of what we are." He flinched at that, but not in anger, more like guilt. He squeezed my hand gently, and for the first time, his eyes held steady. "I'm not ashamed," he said firmly. "I'm confused. I'm terrified. But I'm not ashamed of you. You're the one thing that's made sense to me in a long time." My chest tightened, my throat burning. I nodded slowly, trying not to cry. We sat like that for a while, hand in hand, saying nothing else, just letting the moment be what it was. The air around us grew cooler, the sun dipping lower, casting long shadows across the path. He pulled his hoodie sleeves over his hands, still not letting go of me. Then he looked down and asked, "What do we do now?" It was a fair question. Everything we'd been doing so far felt like improvisation, like we were trying to build something real out of half-whispers and passing glances. "We take it one step at a time," I said. "We keep talking. We don't disappear. And when you're ready, we figure out how to tell her." He knew who I meant. Sarah. The name didn't need to be spoken aloud. He nodded slowly, eyes downcast. "She's going to hate me," he murmured. "Not forever," I said. "She loves you. And she loves me. It'll hurt her at first, but if she really cares, she'll understand." He looked like he wanted to believe that, but doubt lingered in his expression. "She always talked about how she'd be the one to set you up," he said with a sad smile. "Guess I beat her to it." That made me laugh, a soft, watery sound. "You definitely skipped a few steps." He grinned at that, and for a moment, the tension eased. The world felt okay again. Just for a second. As we stood to leave, He paused, still holding my hand. Can we keep this just ours for now? He asked. Just a little longer? I hesitated. My instinct was to push back, to demand more. But I saw the vulnerability in his face, the quiet plea there. I nodded. Okay. But not forever. He agreed with a squeeze of my hand. Not forever. When I got home, my phone buzzed. A text from him. Just one line. I'm glad it's you. I stared at the screen, heart swelling, fingers trembling. I didn't reply right away. I just held the phone close to my chest, let those words settle deep into my bones. And in that moment, despite everything still left unsaid, I knew I wasn't alone anymore. Whatever came next, confusion, confrontation, even heartbreak, I wasn't facing it in the dark. He was right there beside me. Afraid, but willing. Uncertain, but still choosing me. And somehow, that was everything. Secrets, no matter how carefully you carry them, always begin to rot. It starts slow. A glance held too long. A smile too soft. A moment that lingers when it shouldn't. And at first, no one notices, not really. People are distracted. Wrapped in their own lives, their own routines. But over time, something starts to shift. People look a little longer. They ask different questions. The air between you thickens with the weight of something unspoken. And eventually, even silence can't protect you anymore. That's what started happening between me and Ryan. We had our routine, our carefully chosen moments, a quick glance between classes, a text during lunch, a shared ride home when no one was watching. And in those moments, we felt safe. Hidden. Untouchable. But hiding doesn't erase the truth. It only delays it. It was a Thursday when the first crack split open. We were in the school library during our free period. It was one of those rare windows of quiet where the world outside felt suspended. Ryan had slipped into the seat across from me, pretending to look at a textbook, but his foot brushed mine under the table, slow and deliberate. My breath caught in my throat, and I glanced up. He was smirking in that crooked way that made my stomach turn to static. We didn't say anything. We didn't need to. We just sat there in the hush of the bookshelves, pretending to be normal, while our feet tangled gently beneath the table. And then I felt it. The shift. The sudden presence of someone behind me. I turned, and my blood ran cold. Sarah stood there, books in her arms, her eyes fixed on us. Not wide with shock. Not narrowed with suspicion. Just still. Calculating. She didn't say anything, just gave a slow, stiff smile and walked to the next table over. Ryan's foot snapped back. His eyes dropped to his lap. My heart was hammering so loud it drowned out everything else. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't move. I could only sit there, frozen in the mess we had tried so hard to keep invisible. When the bell rang, Ryan was gone before I stood up. I didn't see him for the rest of the day. I didn't hear from him either. And Sarah? She didn't sit with me at lunch. That had never happened. Not once, not in all our years of friendship. I ate alone, my food untouched, my thoughts spiraling. She knew. Or at least she suspected. And somehow, that hurt even more than if she had screamed or thrown something. It was the distance. The coldness. The absence where warmth used to be. That evening, I stared at my phone for hours. Messages sat unsent. My thumb hovered over Ryan's name, then over Sarah's, but I couldn't make myself press send. I didn't know what to say to either of them. I didn't know if I had the right. Around 10, I finally got a text from Ryan. She saw us. I think she knows. I'm sorry. I stared at those words, feeling them settle like stones in my chest. He was sorry. So was I. Sorry we hadn't been careful. Sorry we hadn't been brave. Sorry we'd let something beautiful get tangled in shadows. But mostly, I was sorry because I knew this wasn't just about us anymore. It was about her. About what we were risking. About who we might lose. The next day was worse. Sarah didn't even look at me. She walked past in the hallway without a glance. She laughed louder at her locker, surrounded by people who didn't know her like I did. Who didn't know that she laughed like that when she was trying not to cry. I tried to approach her after school. "Sarah, please," I started, but she cut me off with a look that stopped me cold. "Don't," she said. Just that. One word. Full of pain. Full of betrayal. I watched her walk away, my throat tight, the words I had practiced dying before they reached my lips. That night, I met Ryan outside the gym. We had planned to walk to the store together, but everything felt different now. He looked tired. Not just physically, but in that deeper, soul-draining way. He rubbed the back of his neck and looked at me like he was trying to find the right place to start. "She won't talk to me either," he said. "She asked if I was using you." I didn't know what to say. I flinched. "Using me?" I repeated, the words tasting bitter. He nodded. "She said I was leading you on. That I didn't know what I wanted. That I was being cruel." He looked up then, his eyes red. "I'm not using you. You know that, right?" I nodded, though part of me still hurt from hearing those words come from someone else. "I know," I said softly. "But does she?" We walked in silence for a while, the night air cool against our skin. The street lights cast long shadows, and everything around us felt heavier than usual. "I hate this," he said suddenly. "I hate that something that feels this good has to be so complicated." I stopped walking. "Then why are we still hiding?" I asked. "Why are we letting fear decide everything for us?" He turned to face me, his eyes wide. "Because I'm not ready for the fallout," he said. "Because I'm scared I'll lose her. And maybe you too." My chest tightened. "You can have both," I said. "Not if we keep pretending like we're not real." He didn't answer right away. Just looked at me like he was trying to memorize my face, like he was afraid I'd vanish if he blinked. Then he stepped closer. "I'm not ready to lose you," he whispered. "Even if it means everything else falls apart." I didn't know how to respond. My heart was already breaking in places I didn't know existed. I wanted to tell him it was okay, that we could take more time. But I also wanted to scream, to demand more, to beg for something solid to hold on to. Instead, I did the only thing I could. I took his hand, right there under the streetlight, and held it tight. "I'm scared too," I said. "But I'm still here." And for now, that had to be enough. Even if the world was unraveling around us. Even if the people we loved were pulling away. Even if the truth we shared felt too fragile to survive. We were still here. Still holding on. Still trying. And that meant something. That had to mean something. The silence between me and Sarah had stretched so long it stopped feeling like a pause and started feeling like the end. Each day passed like a soft punishment, a quiet reminder of how fragile things really were. We hadn't spoken in over a week. No texts. No eye contact. No small jokes whispered during class. She didn't sit with me at lunch anymore. I caught glimpses of her in the hallway, surrounded by other friends, her smile perfectly placed, her laugh ringing out just enough to seem real. But I knew her too well. I could tell when she was forcing it. I could tell by the way she tugged at her sleeves when no one was watching, or how she stared into space when everyone else was talking. That was Sarah's version of heartbreak, silent, composed, but screaming just under the surface. And I had caused it. Ryan was quieter too. Not with me. When we were alone, he was still soft, still thoughtful, but I could tell something was weighing on him. Like he was holding himself in place, afraid that one wrong move would make everything around him fall apart. We still texted late into the night. We still met in quiet corners of the school where no one paid much attention. But even those moments felt different now. Tense. Measured. Like we were both waiting for the other shoe to drop. It finally happened on a Tuesday. Rain had been falling all morning, and the sky looked like it had given up trying to be anything but gray. I was walking down the main hallway when I saw Sarah standing by her locker. Alone. Something about the way she was staring at the photo taped inside the door made me stop walking. It was a picture of the three of us, her, me, and Ryan, from some summer barbecue 2 years ago. We were all laughing, arms around each other, our faces shining with sun and youth and a kind of ease we'd lost somewhere along the way. I didn't plan to say anything. I didn't even plan to stop. But my feet didn't move. They just rooted there, a few lockers down, while the hallway buzzed around us. Then she turned. Her eyes locked on mine. And for a second, the world narrowed to just the two of us. She didn't speak. Neither did I. But something cracked in her expression. Some barrier she had carefully built up over the past weeks suddenly crumbled. She slammed her locker shut and walked straight toward me, stopping inches from where I stood. Her voice was low, tight. "Tell me the truth. All of it." I opened my mouth to answer, but no words came. She waited. Her jaw clenched. "Did you and Ryan, was it just prom? Or was it something more?" The hallway felt like it was tilting. My palms were sweating, my heart beating out of rhythm. "It's more," I said quietly. "It's been more." She blinked. Once. Slowly. And then her face twisted, not in anger, not exactly, but something close. Hurt. Disbelief. Something too raw to name. "And you didn't tell me?" she asked, her voice cracking in the middle. "You're my best friend. And he's my brother. And you kept it from me like I'm a stranger. Like I don't matter. It wasn't about you," I tried to say, but she cut me off with a sharp shake of her head. "Everything is about me when it comes to you too. Do you know how it feels to be the last to know? To see it with my own eyes and have you both pretend like nothing was happening?" Her voice rose, and I saw a few heads turn nearby, but no one said anything. No one dared step in. "I was scared," I said, my own voice trembling now. "We were both scared. We didn't want to hurt you. We didn't know how to tell you without breaking something." "You didn't just break something," she whispered, her voice suddenly soft again, and so full of pain it felt like it might break me. "You broke me." That's when I felt it. The sharp sting behind my eyes. The lump in my throat. "I never wanted that," I said. "I never wanted to lie to you. I never wanted to make you feel like you didn't matter. But I couldn't stop how I felt. I couldn't stop what happened." She stared at me for a long moment, then turned her head slightly, eyes searching the hallway. And then her gaze fixed on something, or someone, behind me. I knew before I turned around. Ryan stood just a few feet away. He looked like he hadn't slept in days. He walked up slowly, cautiously, like he was approaching a fire that might burn him. "Sarah," he said, "I know you're angry. I know you feel betrayed. And I can't change what we did. But I need you to know, this wasn't just a fling. It wasn't some experiment, or a joke, or a mistake. I care about him. I really, really care about him." She let out a laugh that sounded more like a sob. "Since when do you care about anything, Ryan?" He winced. That's not fair. Maybe not, she said. But it's how I feel. The three of us stood there in the middle of the hallway, surrounded by whispers and sideways glances, like a scene from a movie that had gone terribly off script. Ryan reached out toward her, but she stepped back. Don't, she said. I need space. I need time. I don't know if I can forgive you yet. Either of you. And with that, she turned and walked away, leaving us standing in the wreckage of everything we thought we protected. That night, Ryan came over. We didn't say much at first. We just sat on my bedroom floor, backs against the bed, the room lit by a single dim lamp. He looked lost. Tired. Broken in a way I hadn't seen before. I think she hates me, he said. She doesn't, I replied. She's hurt. There's a difference. He nodded slowly, then turned his head to look at me. Do you hate me? The question hit hard. I shook my head. Never. He leaned his head on my shoulder, and we sat like that for a long time, just breathing, just being. I don't want to hide anymore, he said quietly. Even if it hurts. Even if people don't understand. I'm tired of pretending this isn't real. My chest ached at the truth in his voice. I wrapped my fingers around his hand and held tight. Then we don't hide, I said. Not anymore. And even though the air between us was thick with everything that still needed healing, something shifted that night. Something opened. Not fixed, not resolved, but opened. Honest. Raw. Real. And maybe that was what we needed. Not perfection. Not promises. Just the truth. And the choice to face it together. There was no dramatic turning point after that. No magical fix. No sudden sunrise that made everything clear and simple again. The days that followed were quiet, careful, and slow. The world didn't change for us, but we started to change within it. Ryan and I stopped hiding. Not in a loud or defiant way, but in small, deliberate choices. We sat next to each other at lunch. We didn't flinch when someone walked by while we were talking. We let our eyes meet across rooms without looking away like it was a mistake. And slowly, the rumors started. Soft whispers in the hallways, side glances from classmates, quiet speculation on social media. But we didn't respond. We didn't explain or defend or apologize. We just let it be. Sarah still didn't talk to either of us. Weeks passed with nothing more than a nod if we passed each other in the hallway. Sometimes I caught her watching us. Not with anger. Not even with betrayal anymore. Just with something distant. Like she was trying to understand who we were now, and if we still fit into her world. And maybe we didn't. Maybe we never would again in the same way. But I kept hoping. Because losing her still felt like a wound that wouldn't stop aching. It was on a Sunday morning, weeks later, when she finally texted me. Just one line. Meet me at our bench? I stared at it for a full minute before I responded. I'll be there in 10. The air was sharp that morning, crisp with the last breath of spring. The sky was a clean pale blue, the kind that made everything feel a little more possible. I walked to the park with my hands stuffed in my jacket pockets, heart pounding against my ribs like it didn't know what to expect. When I saw her sitting there, legs crossed at the ankle, staring at the lake, I had to stop and steady my breath before I approached. She didn't look at me when I sat down beside her. But she spoke first. I've been angry, she said quietly. Really angry. And not just because you didn't tell me, but because I thought I knew everything about you. I thought I was part of all your stories. But there was this whole piece of you that I didn't see. That you didn't let me see. I swallowed hard, guilt pressing against my chest. I didn't mean to shut you out. I said. I was scared. I didn't even know how to explain it to myself, let alone you. And I didn't want to ruin what we had. She nodded slowly. But it still hurt. I know, I whispered. And I'm sorry. I never wanted to lose you. She was quiet for a long time. Then she sighed, finally turning to face me. I'm not going to pretend like everything's okay. I'm not over it. But I've been thinking, maybe I don't need to understand everything right now. Maybe it's enough to just believe that you didn't mean to hurt me. That you're still the same person I've always known. Just with more truth now. I felt the sting behind my eyes, the pressure in my throat. That means everything, I said. She gave a soft, sad smile. And for what it's worth, I don't hate him either. I wanted to. But I don't. I just need time. For both of you. It wasn't a reunion. It wasn't some sweeping emotional reconciliation. But it was real. Honest. And that was more than I had hoped for. We sat there for a while, talking about nothing in particular, just like old times. And when we finally parted, it was with the quiet understanding that things were changing, but not ending. When I told Ryan about it later, his shoulders dropped like he had been holding a weight for weeks without realizing. That's good, he said, voice soft. She'll come around. I nodded. I think so. It's just going to take time. He reached for my hand, holding it like it was second nature now. We've got time, he said. And I believed him. School became easier after that. Not because people stopped talking, they didn't. There were still the whispers, the stares, the occasional half-hearted joke someone thought was clever. But they didn't sting the same way anymore. Because now we were standing in the open. We weren't lying to ourselves or anyone else. And that kind of truth builds a different kind of strength. The kind that doesn't need to shout to be real. We started doing more things together publicly. Coffee shops, walking through town, studying in the library with the door open. Small things, but each one felt like a declaration. Not loud. Not flashy. Just two people learning how to be seen without hiding. One afternoon, as we walked through the front doors of the school together, someone muttered a slur under their breath as we passed. My shoulders tensed, my chest tightening with the familiar instinct to shrink, to disappear. But Ryan stopped. Turned. Looked the guy in the eye. You got something to say? He asked calmly, evenly. The guy shook his head, suddenly small under the weight of his own cowardice. And just like that, we kept walking. My hand found his as we turned the corner, and for the first time, I didn't care who saw. Graduation came faster than I expected. The days blurred together, filled with final projects, plans for the future, promises we weren't sure we'd keep. Ryan and I didn't talk about the long term much. Not yet. But we talked about the summer. About road trips. About freedom. About no longer needing to worry about hallways and rumors and family dinners with carefully chosen words. We talked about who we were becoming, not in some big, dramatic way, but in the quiet, steady rhythm of two people figuring it out together. On the night of our graduation party, we found ourselves back in that same park, under the same bench flights where so much of our story had taken place. Ryan sat beside me, his shoulder against mine, both of us watching the fireflies flicker across the grass. Do you ever think about how weird all this is? He asked. What part? I replied, smiling. All of it, he said. How it started with a text about prom. And now we're this. I laughed, leaning my head on his shoulder. Yeah. It's weird. But it's good weird. He nodded. The best kind of weird. We sat in silence for a moment, just breathing, just being. Then he reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out something small. A photo. It was the picture of us dancing at prom. Someone must have snapped it without us knowing. It was a little blurry, but unmistakably us. His hands on my waist, my face tilted up toward his. Both of us caught in a moment that had felt like a dream. "I kept this," he said, "because that was the night I stopped being afraid of what I felt. That was the night I knew this was real." I took the photo from him, my fingers brushing his. "It was the night everything changed," I whispered, and there, under the soft hum of street lamps and the quiet rustle of summer trees, we kissed. Not because we needed to prove anything. Not because anyone was watching. But because we could. Because we were no longer hiding. Because after everything, the fear, the pain, the silence, the loss, we had found something worth holding on to. Love. In its simplest, quietest form. Honest, imperfect, but real. And if you've ever felt it, if you've ever stood in the dark wondering if anyone would see you and still stay, you know how powerful that is. So if this story reached you, even just a little, remember this. There is nothing wrong with who you are. There is nothing shameful about who you love. And if you ever find someone who makes the world feel softer, safer, more true, don't let fear keep you in the shadows. You deserve to be seen. To be known. To be loved out loud. If this story meant something to you, let it stay with you. And maybe if you're ready, share it with someone else who needs to hear it. Thank you for listening. And remember, you're never alone.